Hey y'all, Editing Bay Ryan here. If you've been listening to all the parts so far, you're probably sick of hearing me, but I do want to jump on real quick just in case somebody's picking us up here and they didn't notice the part 3 part. So this is part of our Endgame series, so we are releasing it in 4 parts. Part 1 was our analysis, part 2 was the first part of the movie up until Steve and Tony have to go back further in time to the 70s. That's where we're going to pick up the movie here. And then part 4, which will be out this coming Thursday, is going to be us discussing our thoughts on the movie, our final thoughts, our review, that sort of stuff. So if you haven't listened to parts 1 and 2, I would highly suggest doing that before jumping into part 3 here, unless you really want to just confuse yourself, which more power to you. Anyway, with all that being said, I'm going to pass it back over to Recording Booth Ryan, and go!
On your left.
So Cap meets Tony and Scott at the rendezvous point. Loki's escape with the Tesseract ruined the time heist, but Tony has one last idea. Travel further back in time and retrieve the Tesseract from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s base of operations in 1970. Tony knows his father was there studying the Tesseract. They will use up the last of their Pym particles, but they also know that that Dr. Pym was at the same place at the same time. Only slight problem is Tony only has a vague idea as to the specific date. They decide to improvise and they set their coordinates to 6 weeks prior to Tony's birth, which is April 7th, 1970. Meanwhile, Scott takes the scepter and Mind Stone back to 2023.
The other consideration that they weren't sure about was how well the CGI would render Hank Pym.
Yeah.
And the answer is okay.
Yeah. Michael Douglas's de-aging in this one was not as good as the Ant-Man.
Yeah, it was not as good as Ant-Man, and it was definitely not as good as Samuel L. Jackson in Captain Marvel, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as you talked about.
Yeah, they spent so much CGI budget. Like, dude, we're going to send it to like the B firm, not the A firm that we normally send it to. So
it took me a minute also to figure out, how does Tony know that this all is there? And then he has his dad's journal, right? In Iron Man 2, he has all of his dad's research.
I suppose,
so
yeah.
I would assume that in that, Walt Disney-esque research that he was doing, he happened across some note that said, I told Hank Pym to kick rocks, or I don't know.
I do love bringing it back to the sort of thing that I'm familiar with, which is Walt Disney in his years working in a bunker in upstate New York.
Yeah. There was so much of that happened.
I still maintain that whoever came up with the 2012 plan, like, just aired, like, why not just go back to this point in time from the get-go and get the Pym particles, and then you don't have to sweat it, right?
I have to, that's always been the question. Everybody's always asked, right? Why don't you just go get more Pym particles? Then you can just go back wherever you need to go and get the stones. And I have to assume that just is something they didn't think of. Right?
Yeah, it was like, well, we've got this much, so we can do this. And this is efficient, and we can all team up together in New York in this time, and it's reasonable for all of us to be here. And crap, we screwed up.
I also have to remind myself, this is a superhero time heist, outer space movie. You can't look at it too closely. So,
yeah.
You know what? Let me just contextualize this a little bit, because Billy Joel once wrote about his New York state of mind. And if you extrapolate said state of mind with additional voltage across the Planck scale, you very much might approach the whisper of energy that it takes to travel through time. I'm just putting that out there, okay?
But what does Bowie have to say about that?
Goo goo gajoob.
So,
wait, that's a different guy.
So we the Tony and Steve, they're like, we're gonna do this. Like, yep, we're gonna do this. So they go back to New Jersey, 1970, and I think this is actually like on this last rewatch. This was my favorite scenes. This is the New Jersey 1970 because it really, really you're so distracted with the big battle and the climactic, very kind of like sentimental parts of that we'll get to in a bit. But these scenes were great. So we see a couple driving a white Oldsmobile Cutlass as they drive past Camp Lehigh Army Base, which would never happen because you would never have an Army base right next to the road, but we'll put that aside. Man mocks the military inside by saying, "Hey man, make love, not war." And that man is Stan Lee, who is making his final MCU cameo as, quote, 70s car man. So they used Lola VFX to de-age Lee back to what he looked like in the 70s. So he has, darker hair, fuller hair, darker mustache. They also digitally recreated his wife, Joan Boocock Lee, who is a British actress. And so Lee's final cameo in the MCU is basically him driving off into the sunset with the woman he loved, which I think, when you think about it, it's like really like a kind of a perfect ending.
The culmination of this entire series that he's been part of for so long, as much as he like appropriated his involvement in all of these different stories.
Yeah, we could put that aside. But
I'll post to socials. I'll make sure I post to socials. There's actually a specific image of Stan Lee that this is de-aged. He's wearing the same outfit and everything, the white jacket with the black shirt unbuttoned all the way down to his belly button.
Like we all did back then.
Right. And it's a great image, so I'll make sure that gets out to socials after release, because I think everybody deserves to see that picture. It's pretty cool.
Another great image is the back of the Oldsmobile Cutlass, which has a license plate that reads 420LRO, and then a bumper sticker that says "Nuff said." Question for you two. I don't. The only thing I could come up with when I spent way too much time on what is the license plate mean. Some people suggested that it means 420 and then LRO. Let's roll one. But 420 as an expression didn't come about to like 1971, so it really bothered me. So, shout out to Santa Fe High School, where it was first coined in 1971, from high school kids who go meet at a statue and smoke at 420. Anyway. Tony and Steve arrive at Camp Lehigh military base, the birthplace of Captain America, which is the funny scene. Like, well, technically I wasn't born here, but just the idea of me was. Camp Lehigh is a facility where Steve trained during World War II, during the first Avenger. It's also the site for AvengerCon, which Kamala Khan attended in Miss Marvel, or will attend in Miss Marvel. Tony asks, where would a quasi-fascistic intelligence organization such as S.H.I.E.L.D. hide the Tesseract? To which Steve replies, Mar-a-Lago. No, sorry, in plain sight. In plain sight. Sorry about that. So we then get a cameo of the ammunitions bunker, which Steve identified in The Winter Soldier as being the location that was against Army regulations. If you remember, it was too close to the barracks. And so that bunker housed the series of computers, which hosted Arnim Zola's mind before it was destroyed by Hydra. If people will remember from The Winter Soldier, how Nat and Steve narrowly avoided being bombed.
And the guy who actually walks into the bunker is Christopher Marcus.
Okay.
Who wrote this movie.
Nice. I'm not sure where Steve, by the way, I should have mentioned, like, Steve and Tony Stark have both appropriated costumes. Steve is wearing a military outfit. I think he's a captain, I believe, who has the bars.
And it's Roscoe is the name on it.
Okay.
Which also, comic book reference here, Roscoe Simons was the name of the man who took up the Captain America mantle while Steve was out doing his nomad thing.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that.
Oh, one of the worst times of Captain America. Okay. So are we led to believe that they like knocked out two guys?
I wish
Indiana Jones style.
Yes.
Yeah, just
stole their perfectly sized uniforms.
He's struggling to button the top button
Yeah.
because Steve is too yoked.
Yeah.
So we get a shot of Captain Rogers and Dr. Stark on the elevator and get a fun cameo of Yvette Nicole Brown from Community, who asks Steve if he's new, to which he replies, not really. Tony searches through his dad's darkened lab before finding the Tesseract. He extracts it from its holding case and throws it into a spare briefcase. Just then, a younger version of Howard appears, and Tony is busted. But for whatever reason, like, Howard doesn't seem to really care that much. I can't quite figure it out. But Tony manages to play it off, introduce himself as a visitor from MIT. You know, you could see Tony's completely flustered, like seeing his dad. He was not prepared for this at all. When asked for his name, Tony just blurts out Howard. He was like, okay, Howard Potts. Howard Potts. Tony forgets the Tesseract. Howard hands him the suitcase with the Tesseract before they head outside for some fresh air. A couple things to note here. In the background, there are a row of green computer screens, and you cannot see it, but VFX has revealed that there is a display of Arnim Zola there. When the other thing that kind of occurred to me is, like, this does not seem like how Howard Stark would react. Like, I don't think he's definitely not like Hank Pym level of abrasiveness, but he also just seems pretty laid back about things. So,
hey, yeah, you're a random guy hanging out in the place. Yeah, hey, that's great. Let's talk about dad stuff.
Yeah, hey, you got an MIT badge. I won't question it anymore. That's fine. Then Steve calls puts the Tesseract. They head outside for some fresh air. Steve calls a younger version of Dr. Hank Pym, the digitally de-aged Michael Douglas, with distracting hair that just really killed me.
It's good 70s hair.
I don't know that he just doesn't strike me as a 70s hair dude, but maybe so.
He is a scientist. Oh yeah, how hippie was Pym in the day? Oh no.
That's a great question. They tell him, he calls to tell him there's a glowing pack, and you could also see, you could tell that he's like Pym is kind of a jerk. He's like, hey, you need to come to get this package. He's like, isn't that your job? Like, what a jerk. He tells him that the package is glowing and that people are afraid to touch it. And then Pym sprints out of his lab. Steve dips in, steals 4 vials of Pym particles. And as he is leaving, that nice Yvette Nicole Brown character turns out to be a narc and is leading the MPs to search for Steve and that guy with the, quote, the hippie beard. So Steve ducks into an office of S.H.I.E.L.D. director Peggy Carter. There he sees a photo of himself, which she has kept on her desk for years. I recall, if I recall correctly, it's also, I think it was I can't remember if it was pre or post getting his enhancements, if you will, but
scrawny.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was scrawny Steve or bulk Steve, but he somehow, so he sees that he's coincidentally enough, he's in her office. He peers through the glass window and he sees Peggy in the next office. He's up to the plane of glass and there's blinds that are open and he sees her. She does not see him. I don't know how. I cannot believe it. He looks at her longingly, knowing that this will likely be the last time he will see her and thinking about his lost love. I think this is probably the moment which changes the end of the movie for Steve, which we'll get to in a bit.
The end of the movie, we'll get there in a bit. You sure about that?
And I didn't define what a bit was because I'm pretending like I'm in the quantum realm and 2 hours feels like a bit. Or
okay.
So as they head out, Howard tells Tony that he's leaving early because he's on big date night with his wife who's pregnant. Tony tells Howard that he has a little girl. Howard says, and he's just look in his face like he just so wants to tell him that it's his granddaughter. He's having this really, really kind of touching, poignant scene.
It's a cool scene.
It's great. It's great. On rewatch, I think this is, like I said, this is probably the Camp Lehigh scenes were my favorite. I think this interaction with his dad really hit home. I don't know why it never struck me as much before. But just to go back to the prior scene just for a second, when Steve's in one of the flaws of that scene is, he sees Peggy Carter. At some point in time, can he just not write a note that says Zola equals Hydra / Nazi and just leave it somewhere? But I don't know why he couldn't do that. It's funny, and also in the scene where Steve stole the Pym particles, it's kind of funny because we see in Ant-Man and Ant-Man the Wasp, like Dr. Pym is really paranoid about someone stealing his work, and it turns out someone did steal his work, and so maybe that leads to why he's paranoid. So Howard asked Tony how he felt being a father the first time. Was he nervous? Did he feel qualified? And Tony just has this conversation.
When your kid was born, were you nervous?
Wildly.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you feel qualified? Like you had any idea how to successfully operate that thing?
I literally pieced it together as I went along. I thought about what my dad did, and
My old man, he never met a problem he couldn't solve with a belt.
I thought my dad was tough on me. And now, looking back on it, I just remember the good stuff. He did drop the odd pearl.
Yeah? Like what?
No amount of money ever bought a second of time.
Smart guy.
Did his best.
Tell you, that kid's not even here yet, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for him. Good to meet you, Potts.
Yeah. Howard, everything's gonna be all right.
Thank you. For everything.
You've done for this country.
He gives him this awkward hug.
Worst hug.
This is it has
No men hugged in that decade.
it reminds it almost it's on the scale of awkward hugs, it's up there with Peter trying to hug Tony in the back of the car in the Spider-Man movie. But
Oh gosh. Yeah. No, I was just letting you out of the car.
So the couple things, there's an Easter egg here about him bringing sauerkraut to his wife. That was Steve McFeely added. That's what his own mother craved while she was pregnant with him. And when he talks about you're doing your best, that was also kind of a playback to the Civil War, where a younger version of Tony is told, I know you did your best, talking about his father. And then he hugged one last time before he joined Steve, and they head back to 2023. So things are looking pretty good. We're like 3 for 3 now, I think, with stones. We get to Asgard. Thor and Rocket arrive in Asgard, and they make their way past Loki's cell to find Jane, and in order to extract the ether lickety split. I do love that Audi had more screen time than Tom Hiddleston in this movie, but we will that aside.
Tom doesn't pay as much. Come on. Volkswagen loves their products.
So before Thor can make a pit stop at the wine cellar to grab a couple of to-go pints, because, come on, you can win a couple roadies for the trip, right? He sees his mother Frigga, and he just is overcome with emotions when he realizes this is the day that his mother would be murdered. And so he freezes up, and Rocket comes like, come here. And he just slaps him across the face to get him out of his grief. And Rocket, who should never be a therapist of any sort, I'm thinking the prior
Pretty straightforward. I like his style.
prior Guardians movie, he was like, get over it. Like, dead people die or something. I can't remember what the exact context was, but like, it was the one where Ryan, do you remember where like Groot was like covering his mouth? Like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that.
Yeah.
Oh, it was to Peter. We was talking about his dead mom. Rocket,
Yeah.
Moms die. Get up. Yeah.
Rocket says, "You think you're the only one that lost people? What do you think we're doing here? I lost the only family I ever had. Quill, Groot, Drax, the chick with the antenna, all gone. I get that you miss your mom, but she's gone, really gone. And there are plenty of people who are only kind of gone, and you can help them. So is it too much to ask that you brush the crumbs out of your beard? make schmoopy talk to pretty pants, and when she's not looking, suck out the Infinity Stone. Help me get my family back. And Thor's like kind of tearing up. He goes, okay. And Rock goes, are you crying? He goes, no. Yes.
Thor.
Poor Thor. Rocket thinks he's got Thor back on board, but turned around and see that he's gone. As Frigga turns a corner, that's when she runs into Thor. And she instantly realizes that this is Thor from the future. So she's been in the movie for like 40 seconds. And she's already figured it out. So they share a touching embrace and they agree to talk. While Thor is having a reunion with his mom, we see Rocket sneak up behind an archival footage of Jane Foster in this when you start talking about the odd CGI run, this is one that definitely jumped out to me, in order to extract the Ether Reality Stone. The next thing you see is him running through the castle as he's being chased by guards, and they're screaming, stop that rabbit! Thor tells Frigga how he failed to defeat Thanos. She tells him that makes him like everyone else. And she tells him that everyone fails at who they're supposed to be, and that the measure of a person, of a hero, is how well they succeed of being who they are. So even though he failed to stop Thanos, the measure of him as a hero is ability to make things right. So Thor wants to tell her about the future, but she tells him that he is there to repair his future, not hers. And it kind of struck me when watching the scene. She realizes when talking to him that she's not around in 2023. So she knows that she will be dying within the next several years. Certainly not that day. So
yeah.
Just then, Rocket arrives. Hi, you must be Mom. I got the thing. Come on, we got to go. And Frigga was like, Thor was like, I wish I had more time. Frigga says, no, this was a gift. Now you go be the man you're meant to be. Thor says, I love you, Mom. And Frigga says, I love you. And eat a salad. And so just as they're about to leave, Thor holds up his hand, and summons Mjolnir, proving that he is still worthy. He could tell for the first time, I got my groove back. And so Rocket activates the time machine, travel suits. They head back to 2023 as the song Come and Get Your Love by Redbone starts to play. And just one thing I want to point out is that Mjolnir wasn't destroyed until 2017 in Ragnarok by Hela. So it would still be around back then.
So what you fail to understand is that Mjolnir has a twin. The end. I don't really have a lot more with that one.
Didn't know that.
I mean, you are our local Norse.
Yes, Norse mythologian and also time travel scientician. In that particular time, they were making another one, and they also failed to make the handle very long for a particular style of hammer. If you don't know, the entire reason why Mjolnir is a short-handled hammer is because as the dwarf Atri was originally crafting it, this is actual.
Where was he crafting it?
Niedervilliers.
Atri.
We got it. We fit it in.
Atri. While he was crafting it, Loki came up as a fly and bit him on the arm, and he accidentally chopped half of the handle off. So, mythology-wise, Thor has always had a short-handled hammer that is much shorter than you would expect for a hammer of that size.
Makes perfect sense.
Interesting.
Obviously, yeah. And then he made two for time travel purposes.
And to have a spare, right?
Yeah.
Like a set of keys.
Yeah. I didn't write that one out. I just pulled that one off the dome. Sorry.
Nice. Well played. Well, we're going to move on over. So we've got Power Stone on lock. We've got the Mind Stone on lock. We've got the Space Stone on lock. We've got the Time Stone on lock.
How many stones are there, Ryan?
There are 6 stones, Eric.
Heck?
Thank you for asking. We need to get over to Or I'm sorry, we have the reality, not the Power
Yep.
Stone. I said we had the Power Stone.
Okay,
I
there we
meant
go.
Reality. Aether is So let's head over to Morag in 2014. We have
Oh
Team
no, that's a
Space
bummer.
Travel, aka Natasha, Nebula, Rhodey, and Clint, aka the most tragic of all of the time heistiness.
Can we just skip this part?
No, the pain makes you realize how good the good times are, Eric.
Oh, okay. I don't like the good
Um,
times.
So we arrive on Morag. Team split up from there. Rhodey and Nebula remain on Morag. Meanwhile, Clint and Natasha head off aboard the Milano and head to Voromir. There's there's kind of a light moment where Clint says, "We're a long way from Budapest." Pretty fun.
Haha. We'll learn more about
Uh,
Budapest in the past and the future.
Yep. And we were at the time of this coming out, we knew that Black Widow was going to be the movie Black Widow, which was in production Nightmares at the time,
Oh, gosh.
was going to take part at least partially in Budapest. On Morag, Rhodes and Nebula decide to wait for Quill because Nebula warns that there are others looking for the Power Stone in 2014, including Thanos, Gamora, Nebula, Thanos, Gamora, and 2014 Nebula herself. We cut to a then current scene of Nebula and Gamora and Thanos circa 2014 who are talking about Ronin's search for the Power Stone. Nebula glitches and plays back the video of Rhodes and Nebula's plan to wait for Quill. Thanos takes note and tells Gamora to take Nebula back to his ship.
So if I'm Rhodey, I'm super pissed right now. I'm like, dude, could you have not have shared this little key fact when we were in the mission?
Right.
And maybe, just maybe you should have gone on a different one, right? Like,
or maybe just turn off your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, don't record it. Oh my goodness.
Kids these days, they got to record everything. So I kind of get that part. They're on their phones. They can't live without their social media. It's fine.
Yeah, David gets it better than us. Ryan's kids are younger. He's got 7. I only have 12 kids, and they're all under the age of 2.
I think right before this too is where Nebula and Gamora are like fighting on like a bridge type thing, and actually in the script that the people they're fighting are Corbinites, which is Beta Ray Bill's people.
Oh, okay.
Oh, interesting.
So
that's like
they don't ever call them Corbinites.
The beginning of Rise of Skywalker that they're fighting on Darth Vader's planet.
Oh yeah,
which I didn't learn about for a long time. Anyway, sorry. Is this the Star Wars show or the Marvel show? Which one am I on?
Back on Thanos' ship, aka Sanctuary, Thanos instructs Ebony Maw to scan Nebula's memory file. Ebony Maw tells Thanos that her files are entangled with the memories of another Nebula. The timestamp on her memory file is from 9 years in the future. Thanos realizes that it's the same Nebula from 2 different times and sets a course for Morag to confront 2023 Nebula. This is where it gets very timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, messy.
Yeah, CGI Thanos looked just as perplexed as me as he's trying to sort out what's happening.
Nebula and Rhodey find Quill amidst the opening credits of Guardians of the Galaxy, with Nebula with "Come and Get Your Love" playing.
He looks so. The way they cut to him just singing without the music in the background, he looks so pathetic. It's
so good.
It's very, very funny.
Do we think that is new footage? Some of it is new footage, I think, right?
I think so. I think it's probably like a stunt double. I don't think it's Chris Pratt, but I do think it's like a stunt double dancing around and singing.
So not knowing, I don't think that she knows when he got the Power Stone, like the precise date. So is it possible they just get there like months in advance, just chilling and hanging out? Do they?
She would know. She would know because Korath,
Oh yeah.
because Korath catches him.
And I mean,
And-
it's Nebula who has become a friend during that time period. So
Also, yeah, Peter Quill. I would not be surprised if Peter Quill had just bragged about it to somebody.
like, oh yes, it was on December 23rd. Obviously.
What time of day? Just so I don't have to sit around there for hours.
No, it was 12:38.
Okay, great, perfect.
Yeah,
So
I
this-
have it down on my Palm Pilot.
It would be in his Zune calendar.
have it on my Windows phone.
So he's singing his famous song, kicking the rodents and whatnot. Nebula uses Quill's lock-picking device to enter the temple. As they approach the towers or the Power Stone, Rhodey, who clearly has been watching a lot of Indiana Jones, says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! This is the part where all the spikes come out and with skeletons on them and everything." Nebula says, "What are you talking about, Rhodes? When you break into a place called the Temple of the Power Stone, it's gonna be a bunch of booby traps." So good.
So dumb.
And then we cut back to him going
Pantomime.
killing baby Thanos.
And then cut someplace in the TVA where Ki Hoi Kwan is booby traps.
I thought you were going to make the reference to the drawer of Infinity Stones that they maintain.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Loose trinkets.
Oh yeah, we got plenty of these. Oh wow.
Nebula ignores this warning and retrieves the Power Stone by just reaching in with her cybernetic arm and pulling it out, creating a visual tell for us as the audience to know who the real Nebula is when we need to here in a second.
She has the gold chunk on her head too.
Yeah.
In addition to the like seared
arm.
Right.
So she hands him the Power Stone. Nebula hands Rhodey the Power Stone, and they activate their time travel suits and sync up in 3, 2, 1. But just in that moment, she glitches out again, and only Rhodey travels back to the present. Nebula seizes up at this very moment. Her neural implants are networked with 2014 Nebula. 2014 Nebula is relaying the memories from 2023 Nebula, which allows Thanos to see the future. He realizes that he discovered all the Infinity Stones in the future, and that the Avengers are going back in time to undo that.
When you think about the 1 in 14 million chances, you think of all the different decisions. Like, instead of Nebula and Rhodey going, it's Nebula and Cap, and that fails something else because Cap won't be able to go back, and you know what I mean. Like, or Tony goes here, but won't know to go back to 1970. And one of the things just occurred to me is like, what if she were holding onto the Power Stone and they snap back, they go backwards. And like it made my head hurt when I thought about it too much.
Yeah, please don't. Don't hurt your brain, please.
It's too late.
Your brain needs to do more things, like entertain our listeners.
Exactly. So 2023 Nebula unfreezes and then just decides to go back to the present. All is well. We're good. We're getting all the stones back to present. Just kidding, because, of course, a Guardian of the Galaxy has to ruin the plan. I think that is contractually obligated in an Avengers movie after Guardians.
Guardians of the jerks. I mean, jerks of the jerk Guardian jerks. What?
Instead, she unfreezes, realizes that Thanos discovered the Avengers' plans, and she runs to the ship to warn Natasha and Clint. Thanos knows! Just before Sanctuary arrives and beams up 2023 Nebula. I don't know why she warned Natasha and Clint. Like, she would know that he doesn't know about Voromir yet. Like,
it's funny you say that, but there was a deleted scene where we'll get to it. Sorry, but there's a deleted scene where Thanos shows up on Vormir.
Oh, I guess
Again?
maybe
Oh wait,
maybe Nebula was around for a conversation that referred to Vormir. That makes more sense. But
I want to hear about this deleted scene when we get there.
Yeah.
Not
so
before.
2023 Nebula pleads with 2014 Gamora to help put a stop to Thanos before she can tell Gamora what Thanos did to her in order to obtain the Soul Stone on Vormir. 2014 Nebula kicks 2023 Nebula to the ground and holds a knife to her own throat before removing the 2023 Nebula's headpiece, that gold visual tell we were talking about. Thanos is planned for the 2020 or 2014 Nebula is to go forward in time instead of the 2023 Nebula. The Avengers will have all the stones gathered in one place, making his plans to get back to achieve balance in the universe that much easier.
I kind of don't. One thing that struck me was we see at the end of Guardians 2, so it's like fall of 2014, like that version Nebula is like completely out and wants to kill her dad, wants to kill Thanos. So when watching it, it seemed like she seemed very, very resistant and still very loyal. And it kind of struck me as a little bit off, but I realize you have to do it to, get to the point where we are in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely was just like there's a lot of does it actually make sense about this that I think you do have to kind of just say it moves it forward.
Yeah, keep going with the thing. I mean, in the comics, yeah, Nebula was the one that brought Thanos down in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But we have departed so significantly from the original comic story at this point. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's all MCU at this point.
Yep.
How are we going to do this? We don't have Lady Death showing up, resurrecting Thanos. We don't have all of these other things that happened. Yeah, how are we've built this group of people to this point? What makes sense for the people that we have now? And it kind of doesn't matter if we maybe have a little inconsistencies with their old stuff.
Yeah, I think they definitely, in order to borrow story beats, they have to glaze over some of the fine details.
For sure.
Yeah. So now let's go over to Vormir. So at this point we have the space, mind, reality, time, and power, because the Power Stone is what was on Morad.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have the Soul Stone left. So everybody's headed back to the present except for the folks on Vormir. But we have lost Nebula, though we don't know that. And we might even get out the rest of everybody unscathed. We can just go pick up the Soul Stone and head on. Voromir's pretty spooky, though. The sky is dark and ominous as Clint and Natasha ascend the mountain. As they get to the top, they find the Keeper of the Soul Stone, a.k.a. Red Skull. Not played by, what's his name?
Hugo Weaving.
No.
Not played by Hugo Weaving anymore.
Excellent Hugo Weaving impression.
Oh, Mark went.
Yeah,
holy cow.
It was years after this came out before I realized that wasn't Hugo Weaving.
Right.
Yeah. The Red Skull was displaced across the cosmos by the Space Stone at the end of Captain America: First Avenger, and now he is the eternal guardian of the Soul Stone.
Just want to interject real quick. The Soul Stone, we've talked about the powers of the other stones. The Soul Stone has the ability to manipulate the soul, the essence that makes up an individual, and it has the ability to resurrect and conjure the spiritual representation of the people who are dead. It also can give sentience to inanimate objects, and it is rumored where everyone was snapped to in Infinity War. I don't know if we've ever
in the comics. In the comics, it has a pocket dimension.
Yeah. Yeah,
that
the
was
Soul
never
Stone is kind of the
explicitly
thing behind everything, where everybody kind of goes when Thanos kills everybody.
Yeah, it was not really well established in the movies ever that the Soul Stone had that same power, but I would assume I think that, like, to me, the world where at the end of Infinity War where Thanos is talking to young Gamora, I think that that's in the Soul Stone. It's a orange hued plane, I guess is the best way to say it,
Okay.
which is very similar to, obviously the Soul Stone is orange in the MCU continuity. So I think I would assume everybody was in the Soul Stone. Be kind of crazy to see like a story, like a Disney Plus series where what civilization got built up inside the Soul Stone.
Half of the universe.
Yeah.
There's so many bees.
Not the
It
bees,
seems like
not
a
the bees.
disproportionate amount of bees.
The bees, good God.
At the top of the mountain, Red Skull recapped the whole sacrifice who you love most thing that he described. Welcome, Natasha, daughter of Ivan, son of Edith.
Natasha goes,
Or Clint, son of Edith.
Natasha goes, who are you?
Consider me a guide to you and to all who seek the Soul Stone. I can't get into the German accent.
I'll do it then. Consider me a guide to. That sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Never
That
mind.
was Arnold. Yeah, that was Austrian, sir.
Sorry, I was so close. Okay, good.
Oh my goodness. Oh, the Austrian versus the
Tell us where it is, then we'll be on our way.
Liebchen. If only it were that easy. That was Irish.
Let's keep it on.
Liebchen, if only it were that easy.
Oh, Faith and McCarter, which you seek lies in front of you, with the lucky charms, as does what
I'm
you've
from
been.
County Cork, and I'm going to condemn you to hell.
Oh,
Natasha, she says, the stone's down there. She's like, this is easy. Just hike down, right?
for one of you, for the other. In order to take the stone, you must lose that which you love, an everlasting exchange, a soul for a soul.
So a couple things here to note from a comic perspective. It's interesting that everybody else he's referred to, everyone else that the Stonekeeper welcomes. He says, so-and-so, son or daughter of their father. So Thanos was son of Alars, Gamora, son of Thanos, but he calls Clint son of Edith, and which is and might be because in the comics, his father Harold Barton was an abusive alcoholic. I just found that was kind of interesting. I don't know if that was a tie to that, and I thought that was kind of interesting for me because I did
kind of
just kind of jumped out, kind of weird.
Edith definitely is the main parental figure for Clint, I would say.
Yeah, it's really. There's a part of me that wonders when they visit him in particular in this secondary timeline. Does the Skull know about the other timeline?
Yeah.
Does the Red Skull know that Thanos has already done this in a different timeline? Is that where we're starting to see some fractures in the multiverse? Because as a being that said, I sought the stones and now I've been cursed to stay here forever, does he kind of transcend the general worldview of this? Does he know, oh wait, they're doing a time heist. Oh, okay, I can help out with the time heist. But you still have to, one of you has to die.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I I totally lost my.
I
train of
broke
thought.
this podcast. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Puny Pod. If you want to listen to some of our other shows on the network.
What if we snapped away half the episode?
Oh God.
We didn't
No,
get
that's what happened to the Monthly Bugle last month.
You just stopped.
I want to pause here just for a second to say, when they're having this discussion and processing it, like, was this not part of the prep? Did they not pay attention to Nebula's presentation at all? Saying that like they have to know.
Oh yeah,
they have to know what happened, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, they know about the sacrifice.
They
Right?
had to have, because like, why else would have they sent two characters who care about each other?
Well, that's
right?
the thing. That was one in the 14 minutes. What if they had sent like, Nebula and Clint? Like, well, we'll never get the Soul Stone. We're just stuck here, right?
I guess I'll throw
Cap's
my bow
like,
down there and see what
I like
happens.
you, but
That much.
I don't love you. So if I throw you over the cliff, who cares? Huh?
Yeah.
So I don't think they knew. Either they didn't pay attention, which I can totally see, because if they were just like kind of like zoned out, or maybe they like went to use the bathroom or something and they were just missed that part of the presentation. I don't know, but they realized
Fat Thor was like, oh, by the way, they had to kill somebody that they love the most. Yeah. You ready for that? Everybody walked back into the room, and he's like, "Wait, was I talk?" And they went, "Yeah, okay. Let's not listen to him, and let's go to." It's so interesting.
So yeah, they process through this, and there's a really funny moment where Clint's like, "Hey there," to Red
Yeah,
Skull.
totally.
That does punctuate it with a little bit of humor, where you're like, they're literally deciding who dies, right? Either Clint dies and his family comes back to know Clint, or if it all works, right?
Right.
Or Natasha, who Clint very much cares about, has to die.
If we don't get that stone, billions of people stay dead.
And I guess we both know who it's gotta be.
I guess we do.
I'm starting to think we mean different people here, Natasha.
The last 5 years I've been trying to do one thing, get to right here. That's all it's been about, bringing everybody back.
No, don't you get all decent on me now.
What, you think I want to do it? I'm trying to save your life, you idiot.
Yeah, well, I don't want you to. How's that? Natasha, you know what I've done. You know what I've become.
Well, I don't judge people on their worst mistakes.
Maybe you should.
You didn't.
You're a pain in my ass, you know that. Okay. You win.
It's
Oh.
definitely
And-
definitely really interesting.
And she has, quote, no family, which is wrong, as we find out later.
Yeah.
But yeah, who's the better choice? My goodness. I mean, I love Hawkeye's TV series that we'll talk about eventually. But yeah, who is the better choice? And they both fight. And as we're watching it, I personally, I had no idea who was going to go.
Yeah. I didn't either. I think like they staked it right. They framed it right as like characters who have stakes, but they're not like, it's not like Tony and Pepper are there, right?
Yeah.
Where like Tony and Pepper are there, Pepper's gonna die. That's the way it's gonna
They're
go.
friends.
I think they're more than friends. Let's be honest.
They're more than friends, but they're not like
They remember Budapest very fondly for a specific reason.
I don't think that they've. Okay, let's be vulgar. I don't think they've.
Language.
Oh, I do. I do.
No,
Absolutely.
I think in the comic continuity, I believe they have, but in the movies, I don't think they have.
Yeah,
Completely.
It's such a sexless.
No,
continuity of
here's the thing.
MCU.
Okay. There is a we should say we'll put aside the dialogue. I do like the one part of dialogue where it says, "I think we're talking about different people here, Natasha," and they fight and she flings herself off the edge. She is wearing an arrow around her neck. He, in order to get the soul stone back, you had to lose someone you loved. So either one of them would have qualified, right?
Yeah.
I think there is. If they haven't had a relationship in the past, it'll be a tough conversation when he gets home. When he tells his wife, like, "Well, here's what happened. You had to sacrifice someone you loved," and it was like, "Wait, what? Hold on now." Well, just kind of like fraternal, like buddy love, right?
Love,
It's like right.
He does have a child named after her.
Which is and Tony has one named after his weird Uncle Morgan. Like, I don't know.
I just think that the two of them have always been sexless. It's fine. They've gone through horrible trauma together.
Yeah,
They've murdered people together, and maybe that's what brings them to that's what binds them, is they've gone through some horrible stuff. This is an odd conversation that we're having.
Yeah. Well, let's so ultimately they kind of get into this tussle. They Clint knocks her to the ground, says, "Tell my family I love them." Natasha chases him, tasers him with the widow's bite. Tells Clint to tell them himself. She starts to run. He fires an exploding arrow, which knocks her over and stuns her. Clint runs towards the cliff, and we see a slow motion moment where he jumps off, only to be saved by Natasha, who fires a cable, which she
halfway
secures to Clint.
down.
Yeah. And it's just like, we're not doing it justice. Go watch this part of the movie. If you have not watched it, go watch it. It's so good and so well done by these actors to act like well written, well acted. Like, this is probably, as much as the paternal stuff from 1970s New Jersey is really beautiful, like that moment's really beautiful for Tony, this moment is just gut-wrenching and just so also beautiful, but in a very different way.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Clint wakes up after seeing Natasha broken on the ground, and he has the soul stone, and he heads back to current day.
I think to touch base on something Erik said very, very early on, the kind of the ways in which, like, emotionally, like, we were feeling great after New Jersey, and then we're just down here. It is such a gut punch. I point out there were a couple different versions of this scene. There was one where Clint makes the sacrifice, but it was interesting enough, like, several women of the crew objected, saying it should be Natasha should be the one to show heroism and sacrificial love for Clint and his family, as opposed to, like, the man solving it. Which I thought was which I think turned out well. The other thing was, in the deleted scene that I watched, Thanos and his army show up. So the Chitauri show up, Thanos shows up, Clint and basically, like, and Natasha are fighting them off. And, while Clint is firing at one of the Chitauri, like, she basically runs off the edge of the cliff and sacrifices herself. But the way in which they do it here, where holding onto the cable, holding onto her hand, like, she kicks off and she forces him to let go. It was, oh man, it was really well done.
I think it being the two of them is the most impactful. That's the most emotional impact you can get. We've built this up for years with these two characters, where We know that Clint has a family. We know that she doesn't. Did they? Didn't they? It doesn't matter. What it comes down to is that these are two friends who have been through some serious shit for so long, and they have this history together. And seeing them fight it out, Clint is almost the obvious choice because it's a movie. Oh, Clint is going to die because he's got a family. That's what you think. Oh no, Clint is going to die and his family will be martyred. Like, they're all, I mean, really, in the context of this particular film, they're already dead. He lost all of them. So for him to say, I lost my entire family and I'm the one that needs to go. If the two of us who love each other are going to part ways, I'm the one that needs, I've already lost it all. Natasha's saying, I've also already lost it all. Gosh. Yeah, it's just it's a gut wrencher.
Yeah.
And watching it, that's why at the time I remember not knowing which way it was going to go, and that was so significant.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I know, I've layered on all this other stuff. Like, oh, well, if they succeed, Clint gets his family back.
Right.
And that might be why Natasha going is important. Because she's got her sisters who aren't biological sisters. It's another movie. It's another thing. But he has his actual family. They could come back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she wants. And she knows that. And we don't. We kind of know that. We've seen them go away, but we don't know what she has at stake. It's very impactful and it's very nebulous. And that's the emotional core of the movie, despite the whole and like, yay, heroes thing that comes at the end. This is more gut-wrenching than Thanos throwing Gamora over the edge.
Oh, yeah, without question.
This is devastating.
Yeah, well.
They're fighting. Who will die? I want to die. No, I want to die.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to fathom. Ryan, the question I have for you, and fortunately though, that's the last gut punch of the movie. Fortunately, Ryan, question for you. You and I are on Vormir. This is going down way different, right? You're like, hey man, you've had a pretty good run, my man. Why don't you take the jump?
Oh no! I'm here witnessing this. All right, what do you get?
Let's go back and forth. Like, I don't know, man. Like, maybe it should be you. Like, should we flip a coin?
Are you asking if I would sacrifice you? Is that what you're asking right now, David?
That is exactly what he's asking you.
I've seen Ryan be like, "Hey, man, check over the edge. Do you see it down there?" And just like run it from behind, push me off.
Kick you in the ass.
Hey, my kids are fully grown. Hey, my kid's a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Ooh.
I've got two kids, man. You've got anyway.
Oh.
So we get back to Avengers Compound.
No. Answer the question.
Oh, I don't know how. I don't.
Oh, I would kill him in cold blood. So
it's good to know.
Well, it's not in cold blood. It doesn't work if you don't love him.
I love the idea. Like you push me off, and like you wake up and you're like, I guess I didn't get a stone.
Goes like,
crap! I didn't get the stone. I killed my friend.
Yeah,
you did not love him.
So dumb.
No.
So we're back. It's 2023. Heroes are at Avengers Compound. They return from their various time heists. Everyone except for Natasha. They look at Clint's face, and that basically tells them all they need to know. I thought
she was allergic to wheat, and I gave her a hot dog
covered with mayonnaise. She was allergic to mayonnaise. I thought Nebula was not there, but Ryan, you said that she was there.
Yeah, Nebula, 2014 Nebula impersonating 2023 Nebula
Yes, came back. Ooh.
came back.
Okay, that's right.
I thought the same because I thought the same thing you did of like, oh, nobody cares that Nebula's not there, and then I watched it again. I was like, oh yeah, no, the bad Nebula's
Got
there.
it. Okay, so she
We've got to establish this.
Yeah.
We've got to get the foothold.
Got it. Okay. We are back. So the regroup at Tony's cabin on the lake. We are seeing our heroes grieving and processing her death, realizing that they are really the only family that she had. We'll see Black Widow movie that's not quite true. Thor is angry and questions why they can't bring her back with the stones. Clint is weeping. He says it just can't be undone. Natasha's death shakes the heroes to the core, but they're determined to bring meaning to her sacrifice by bringing everyone back that Thanos took from them. So Tony constructs his own Infinity Gauntlet to channel the stone's power in the hopes that they can snap everyone back. Rocket asks, who's going to snap their freaking fingers? And it's one of my favorite scenes. Thor, you can't have a lot of comedy in this movie because there's so much...
It's so dark.
It's dark. It's grief. It's a lot of things.
Well, and this scene is literally following up. There are 5 characters there, and they each represent a stage of grief.
They all failed.
Right? Thor is in denial. Hulk is angry. Clint is bargaining. Steve is dealing with depression, and Tony is the closest to acceptance. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think Tony earlier in the movie has accepted some things.
Mhm.
I have never put Kubler-Ross on this, but
yeah, it's
well
one of
done,
those things
sir.
where I was like, oh,
this is coming from a psychologist, so
oh, thank you.
Well done. Wow.
Yeah, well done.
Wow.
Thor, this I do like. There are some fun scenes. This is one of them. Thor volunteers to make amends for his past failings, but the team, he's like, I'll do it. I'm Thor, the strongest Avenger, right? Is the password. And basically the team, he's like the guy's like 5 vodka tonics in. He was like, I'll drive. And we're like, nah, buddy. I don't think.
Hey, how about no?
How about no? He's not in the right state of mind. So it's going to fall to Bruce, who's experienced with gamma radiation, and his body will be better withstand the stone's power. And Hulk says, let's do it. And Tony says, okay, remember, everyone that Thanos snapped away from 5 years ago, you're bringing them back today. Don't change anything from the last 5 years, except maybe give Ruth Bader Ginsburg another year of life, but we'll leave that alone.
Well, it's such a specific wish. That's what this is. It's a wish.
So, team gets ready.
Wishing to a genie.
Team gets ready. Tony and Rhodey don their armor. Rocket puts on goggles for some reason, hides behind Thor. And Tony tells Friday to activate the barn door protocol, which completely secures and seals the room, make it kind of blast proof, if you will. Hulk dons the gauntlet and the power. And I'm going to ask you, Ryan, what was your impression of the Hulk suit up of the glove? How would that rate?
Oh, it is pretty cool. I actually like this one maybe better than like Tony's nanobots because there is a mechanical element to it. Like it's still, you kind of see plates and gears.
Yeah,
move.
it expands and fits around his hand.
Yeah,
it's cool.
And it doesn't just like, it's not just like the nanoparticles just make it bigger. It's like actual pieces. Like there's a kinetic movement to it, which I really like.
Yeah, it's cool. He dons the gauntlet. Just as soon as he does, just the power just surges through him and overwhelms him, sends him to his knees, and he's crying in pain. And his arm is we'll see, is horribly burned, but he manages to muster enough strength to snap his fingers, and he passes out for a moment and drops the gauntlet, and everyone's like, "Did it work?" And so they open up the blast doors. They walk outside. Clint's phone rings. His wife's calling him.
That quiet moment of them hearing animals.
Yeah.
It really cements that Thanos didn't just kill people. He killed everything.
Yep.
Half of everything.
Yep.
And them being delighted to hear a bird
Yeah.
Do you remember the first like bird flu in the 90s?
Mm-hmm.
There was a time in the Midwest where like every bird was dead. And there was a time that came afterward where we could start to hear robins and other birds chirping and doing their thing. Like that hits for me. Knowing that there was a time where I couldn't hear birds. It's like
Yeah.
9/11, the months after 9/11, not hearing a plane fly over your head.
Right.
There's a noise that you're used to hearing that you don't hear anymore.
Yeah. And for our even younger listeners, I mean, it was like in COVID when you hit the actual lockdowns, you're not hearing the street noise. Right? You don't hear, if you lived next to a street that had regular traffic, you didn't hear it. Or you saw the overhead shots of like somebody flying over major cities and they're completely deserted.
Yeah, it's been completely replaced by people ramming into each other at 90 miles per hour.
Yeah, right.
All of the essential workers driving home from work going, yeah! Sorry.
And then people howling at the moon.
That too. Oh, gosh. Oh, my goodness. Oh, all of this conversation is triggering. Okay. All right. Back to work, gents. This is your show. Sorry.
But Scott, he goes out to these guys. To your point, like he hears it's sunny. He hears birds chirping, and he's like, guys, I think it worked. And they get to enjoy it for about 2 seconds before the Sanctuary 2, which in a prior scene was Nebula commandeered the quantum tunnel and used it to pull the Sanctuary 2 forward to 2023 and just starts saturation bombing Avengers compound into oblivion. Somehow everyone's still alive. I don't know how, but we get a bunch of.
There were approximately 1,200 people working in that building. They're all dead.
Yeah, it's
regular
the
people.
old Death Star problem.
Yeah.
The plumbers, they're all gone. The other thing I did notice is there is proof of a backup plan here. When Bad Nebula, we'll call her, goes to pull Sanctuary 2 through, you can actually see programmed into the time machine, there's the dates 2988 BC and 2009 AD programmed in. 2988 would have been when Odin fought the Dark Elves for the first time to get the ether.
Damn.
And then 2009, I guess, would be a time where they knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. had the Tesseract, because that's when it had been handed over as maybe, what's his name? Fury was starting to work on Avengers Initiative stuff. So that one's a little bit looser, but the 2988 is almost certainly a backup plan for the ether.
This is why I listen to this show, is facts like that. Okay.
It's crazy.
My goodness.
Yeah.
They put so much thought into everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just some jerk who's like, I liked when the bombs went bloom. And then the heroes did the win. Yay.
I will put aside the fact that I don't know how she was able to bring the Sanctuary time travel, how that occurs, because you need either the time stone or the Pym particles in the suit and the quantum tunnel. So I don't know how she did it.
She gives him the Pym particle. She gives
she goes through the time
Thanos
thing that they built.
She had
right?
one. She had one
but
Pym
there
particle.
wouldn't be enough particles.
There would not be enough
Now I
particles.
know.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Maybe Hank.
Maybe they went to Vormir and picked him up off of Black Widow's body.
I was going to use a more vulgar term for making Pym particles.
Pimp
This is
articles?
a family show, so I won't say what he might have done to make more.
We get a bunch of action cutscenes, and we'll kind of go through these pretty quick. But we see Rocket and Rhodes and Hulk and Scott have fallen through a cavern that seems to go like hundreds of feet, and they're nearly buried alive. Hulk is struggling to hold up the rubble. That's why I was asking how strong he is. If it was like regular Hulk or medium Hulk that threatens him, Rhodey, and Rocket before a wave of water washes through. Scott hears
Rocket with his like sobbing.
Oh, I know. It's so
terrible. Oh, he is given up. He sounds like he's done.
Mm-hmm. Scott hears Rhodey's distress signal, goes to save them. Clint wakes up, sees the gauntlet semi-buried, is chased by Chitauri. 2023 Nebula tells 2014 Gamora about the future and what will happen to them. They bond and they plan to stop Thanos. Thanos arrives, instructs 2014 Nebula to retrieve the stones while he just takes off puts his sword in the ground, takes his helmet off, puts it on, it's just chilling there.
So chill.
So chill. Iron Man wakes Cap. They join Thor, and Thor is just watching Thanos. He just reminds me of like Darth Maul, just like staring down the whole time. And they know it's a trap, but they're in agreement. And Thor says, let's kill him properly this time. And then he summons both Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, and the sky crackles with thunder and lightning as they approach Thanos. Thanos tells him he has a new plan. Basically, last time, I let half you guys survive, but it was just resistance. So this time I'm going to tear the universe down to the studs and start and remake it from scratch. Perfectly balanced with no one the wiser. Talks about having a grateful universe. And then they just have this big 3-on-1 CGI battle. Hulk, Rocket, Rhodey are about to drown. Ant-Man arrives, turns into Giant Man, saves them. Clint narrowly escapes the Chitauri. He kind of repels up to a higher level, kind of gets there, kind of lays on the ground, just like, oh my, he just needs a rest for a second. He's like, oh, I know you. And then it basically gives the gauntlet to Nebula, but it's 2014 Nebula. It's not 2023 Nebula. Oops. She is then confronted. Past Nebula, is confronted by current Nebula and 2014 Gamora. Gamora tries to convince 2014 Nebula to join them. She refuses. She attempts to shoot Gamora, but then future self Nebula guns down the woman that she used to be. Steve, Tony, Thor attack as a team and gives it everything they have. And while Thanos doesn't have the Infinity Stones, he is still super powerful.
He's still a Titan at this point.
Still a Titan. Thanos incapacitates Iron Man and Thor, and he's just as he's about to drive Stormbreaker into Thor's chest. He's like on top of Thor's on the ground. You know, Thor is not, let's be honest, Thor is not like in mid-season form. Like he is definitely like off season, like put on.
His beard is though.
His beard looks great. No question about that.
Lots of braids. Love it.
And then things are not looking good. And at that point, you see Mjolnir on the ground until it starts to levitate off. And you see, and as Thanos is about to finish off Thor, Mjolnir arrives and we turn and they look and it's Captain America. Sorry about that, Edit Ryan. That is worthy to wield Mjolnir. And
Captain America is appropriate.
and it's the callback to Age of Ultron. Thor says, "I knew it," and calls back to Ultron when and it's been, I think it's now canon that like he could lift the whole thing, but he didn't do it so as to, you know, not embarrass Thor.
Yeah, I don't want to emasculate my friend.
Yeah. But Josh Whedon had hinted that Rogers could lift it the whole time, but didn't, so as not to hurt his feelings. And I'm sure you experienced the same thing. Audience goes
just erupt.
Mad.
Insane.
Goes bonkers. And
the first, not the first cry, but seriously, the entire room losing it. I'm sorry, my dog is scraping at a blanket over here, and
it's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just
You know what? My dog couldn't do that unless they were worthy. So, but yeah, my goodness, that moment in the theater, every time you watch it, for me, every time I have seen that moment since, it harkens back to that feeling.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thing that has happened in that movie, great. There are things that were like, oh wow, oh that's so emotional. That's the one where no matter what, you're like, yes, let's go. Let's go. Take him out. We know what's going to happen at this point, but you want it, like, just feeling that again. That is the culmination of these decades of movies. This foundation that was built underneath you to say, no one can touch this hammer but the most worthy person. And to see Thor, who's struggling with his own emotional journey, and say, I don't know if I'm worthy. Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool. I'm worthy. Look, I brought this back to the battle. And then to see at the end, Thor is losing to this superior force. It's the big three that are fighting this guy. All three have failed. But Captain America picks it up.
Yeah. And this was one of those moments where, like, comic book fans knew this could happen, right?
Oh, of
like,
course, yeah.
It happened in Thor. First time, Thor 390. Actually, Captain was known as the Captain at the time, because John Walker was Captain America, and
oh, of course, yes, our favorite Captain.
Steve had used his back pay from the military from the time he was frozen to build out a superhero team. But
gosh.
Anyways, silly comic stuff aside,
yeah,
like, we knew that this could happen. Everybody had speculated about it since Age of Ultron. Like, was that?
Did he just fake it? Yeah.
Yeah. And then you see it on screen in front of you. I think I stood up in the theater. I think Lisa had to, like, hold me or had to, like, pull me back.
You blacked out. You're like, yes,
so excited.
Lisa's like, please sit down. Please. I know it's great.
It was so good. It's so good. He
goodness.
He fights him with a combination. The fighting he does with the shield and the hammer, and then when he calls that lightning and he just throws it on Thanos, and Thanos is like kind of crawling backwards. Like, oh man, so awesome.
Yeah, he knows what he needs to do, and he does it with the precision of someone that shouldn't have that kind of precision. He's never wielded this weapon before, but he knows what it does. And he shouldn't have access to this power, but he does. And oh my goodness.
Same thing. I don't know how. I kind of don't understand why he's able to call like lightning and thunder with the hammer, because I thought it was within Thor himself. But
well, Thor wasn't the god of hammers, but
that's true. And then just as quickly, it all turns, and Thanos recovers and matches him blow by blow. And then he picks up his sword, and he is just hammering away at the shield, and he just shatters it down, just like to almost half the size. And Thanos says, in all my years of conquest, violence, slaughter, it was never personal. But I'll tell you now, what I'm about to do to your stubborn, annoying little planet, I'm going to enjoy it very, very much. And
brutal.
And then his entire army shows up, and oh man, it's like just the roller coaster.
Yeah.
You're like, how are they going to pull it off? What in the world? This is 3 dudes against an army again. It was 3 dudes against 1 guy who's a big guy, but now it's 3 dudes against an enormous army, and all 3 of them have already failed.
Yes.
And none of those dudes are Captain Marvel.
No.
Well, yeah, none of those dudes are a super cool lady from space.
Yeah. So Steve alone drags himself to his feet. He straps the remnants of his shield to his arm. You see that it almost looks like there's like a compound fracture.
Yeah,
on
it
his
looks like
arm.
he's using the shield to hold his arm together. Oh, his
Yeah.
face is gray. It's covered with ash.
Yeah, they're just beat. But in Steve fashion, he can do this all day.
I'm so glad you didn't say it though. I would have been like so annoyed.
Oh yeah. No.
So he prepares for his final stand.
Captain Sam, can you hear me? On your left.
And then this is the moment where this scene, it could be pulled out and put into a YouTube montage. It could be edited over with awful music. It doesn't matter what it is. This one makes me weep openly because it is just a comic book splash page come to life.
I have difficulty holding it together thinking about this scene.
Yeah.
Right now, as we're talking
reading
about
through it is going to be tricky. Fans buckle up. So a portal opens and first steps out T'Challa, Shuri, Okoye, and the tribes of Wakanda, as well as Sam Wilson and Sam Wilson, who's the Falcon, flies through. We hear Ibombe, the war chant from Wakanda, and then more portals just keep opening. We brought
it's every hero pose you could imagine.
Yeah. 32 named characters. I'm gonna try and go through these.
Go for it.
So the OG Avengers, you got Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk. You've got new Avengers, War Machine, Falcon, Winter Soldier, Scarlet Witch, Doctor Strange, Wong, Ant-Man, Wasp, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel. You have the Wakandans, Black Panther, Okoye, Shuri, M'Baku. You have the Guardians, Bad Nebula or 2014 Gamora, Good Nebula, 2023 Nebula, Star-Lord, Rocket, Groot, Mantis, Drax, Kraglin. Also, Howard the Duck is hanging out with the Ravengers. Coming from Asgard, you've got Valkyrie, Korg, and Meek. Plus Asgardians and Ravagers out the wazoo. And you see that Pepper has donned her rescue armor. So she has shown up. It's just everybody except the guys from Netflix, the Defenders from Netflix, except for the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Well, maybe Wong didn't know about Matt.
Yeah, Matt Murdock was.
He's like, you know what, Matt? He doesn't even own a gun. We're fighting aliens.
Could you imagine the Punisher being in this? Like in this scene?
Oh gosh,
the brutality.
That one would have worked.
Yeah,
John Barenthal popping through and blowing people away. Yeah.
They were going to have Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, but they thought it was be quote unquote too much of a character orgy, so they did not make the cut. I think
they didn't make the character orgy.
Did not make the character orgy. We're invited, to the key party. Like Doctor Strange. Is that everyone? He's like, Wong's like, what? You want more? Like,
yeah,
actually would.
That's perfect.
Can we give Harley Keener of Iron Man suit? I mean, come on now. Let's do it.
Hey, we'll get there. I think he's going to be Iron Lad. But anyway, so the stage is set. Everybody's there. Ant-Man pops out of the rubble as Giant Man carrying War
Rocket.
Machine in a conspicuously red, white, and blue armor. He's got Rocket. He's got Hulk with him. Everybody's ready to go.
And Hulk's like, why
And-
didn't I just do this myself?
Yeah. And Avengers, and then Steve gets to say the line that we all have been waiting for. And it's been hinted at multiple times. He said it at the end of Age of Ultron, but the film ran out.
It's so crazy the way that they set this up.
Yeah.
Because, he's gotten to that point and hasn't finally said the word. But I don't think, personally, as a fan, as a comic book reader, as someone who has been invested in this entire franchise, I didn't realize until that exact moment he never said assemble.
Yeah. And we get
What if he had said "flame on"?
Avengers, flame on.
we'll save that for
and like
for a few
three
years.
people went,
What?
I guess I could. Okay, yeah, I could do that. And everybody else is just standing around looking at each other, and Thanos kills them all.
So, yeah. And one other thing I will note, when Cap's shield is actually broken in the exact same way that his shield was broken in Tony's nightmare
premonition,
from Age of
yeah,
Ultron.
yeah.
So then we get just a complete unload. I mean, this is just
It's catharsis. It's orgasmic.
Yeah. We're not going to break everything down, but here's some highlights. Giant Man punches a Leviathan and knocks it out. We get a cool back-to-back shot of Iron Man in rescue firing off blasts, a la Iron Man 2 kill box scene. Mantis is sleeping a Chitauri, like one of the Chitauri gorillas. She uses her power to put the beast to sleep and then just kicks it in the head. Thor and Iron Man, Thor and Captain America trade weapons. Kind of, you take
No,
the
you
small
take
one,
the
I'll
little
take
one.
the big one. Tony finally reunites with Peter and gives him a hug that's intentional, and Peter has this great this is nice moment, after being told that he wasn't actually being hugged, that Tony was just reaching for the door handle. 2014 Gamora saves Peter Quill and then knees him in the nuts. She
does it twice.
with her. Yeah,
You missed it the first time,
But you got it. But you got it the second time.
you got both of them the second time. Gamora, is this the one? Seriously? Nebula, the choices were him or a tree. Falcon stabs stuff with his wings. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's just raging back and forth. Scott and Hope find their way. Finally, they realize there's like this plan to take the stones out of there, right? Get them out of this time and this place. So they go to the quantum tunnel that's in the X-Con van, so that they can fix it and go to the past. Take the stones out of this time and place, away from Thanos. At the same time, Hawkeye and then Black Panther, then Spider-Man try to keep up with the Stark Infinity Gauntlet and keep it out of Thanos' clutches, with the help of a bunch of other people who weren't in the rest of the movie, to get them screen time. Um, what so a few VFX gaffes that I just want to mention at this point. One, in the wide shot of everybody lined up, Cap's shield is not broken. It's a complete shield at that point.
Mhm.
Which is a little funny, right? Obviously it's broken. Also during the kind of lineup scene as they kind of run along the front line of people, Doctor Strange has the Eye of Agamotto, which he wouldn't have at this point. It would have been it was crushed on Titan, and he doesn't have it for the rest of the fight. And then also regular sized man is hot wiring the car. Well, simultaneously, Giant Man is pushing a Leviathan through a portal.
Yeah, I
Oh,
saw that as well. They realized that was one of the goofs they made. They had both Ant-Man
yeah,
and Giant Man at the same time. The
yeah.
other things I would point out, and then I have a question for you all, but there are a lot of characters that wear masks. So it's Iron Man, Black Panther, Star-Lord, Spider-Man, rescue others, which come and go during the battle. And it's because actors have recognition clauses in their contracts that say their face have to be displayed a certain amount in the movie, which kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The so he does not have the Eye of Agamotto. Is that correct? Or he is wearing
Correct. He's where they screwed up and they put it on him in the like pan scene, but he does not have it.
There's no stone in it.
Canonically.
There's no stone in it. Okay.
Well, it's being crushed.
Okay. Question I have for you all. So Scott and Hope, they're fixing the van, and everyone else is trying to get the gauntlet to the van. Does that mean that Ant-Man and Wasp are going to be the ones that go back in time? Like what's the game plan? Do you know? I don't know if it's ever like revealed.
Yeah.
Who's returning the stones?
I guess probably it's like get somebody back in time, right? Just I think this is a pretty like haphazard plan. This is not a well thought out heist or anything. This is, oh crap, we got to get Thanos is here. The gauntlet is also
Let's
here.
get it
we
away.
need to make somebody be in a different place.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. It's again, you gotta let some of this stuff go.
For sure. So moving on in the story, Tony asks Doctor Strange, is this the 1 in 14 million scenario you saw? And Strange says, if I tell you, it won't happen.
What a tease.
Yeah. Thanos is then confronted by Scarlet Witch, who is powering up to her OP form. She's not quite all the way to her super chaos Scarlet Witch form, but she's getting there. She's looking to avenge Vision's death, and she almost beats Thanos. She works him pretty good. But he manages to survive enough to basically tell his flagship to bomb the battlefield with no concern for friendly fire. The I think it's no, it's not Corvus.
Ebony Maw?
It's one of the Black Order says it's Ebony Maw, I think, is like, hey, what about our people? And he's like, I don't care. Just starts bombing.
I think she would have defeated him. She was like, she had him on the ropes. When Strange talks about the 1 in 14 million scenario, because he's using the time stone, had looked at all the different potential combinations. It does remind me of the Dormammu, I've come to bargain, where he has all these scenes over and over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. So firing is coming down. We see that our heroes are scrambling to avoid getting hit. Spider-Man gets knocked off of Valkyrie's Pegasus and drops the gauntlet. The heroes scramble to avoid the blast. Rocket dives on top of Groot to protect him, which is a really cool, like, Rocket protecting Groot rather than Groot who sacrificed himself in Guardians of the Galaxy to protect the Guardians. Then the firing stops and the guns reposition and start firing at something which just entered the atmosphere. That something is Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel flies in super, super, super OP. She flies through the whole of Sanctuary and destroys the entire starship. Danvers goes to get the gauntlet and finds Peter hiding in a ditch. And I love this exchange. Hey, I'm Peter Parker. Carol Danvers. Hey, Peter Parker. You got something for me? Peter, seeing Thanos' force approaching. How are you going to get through all of that? And then Wanda pops in. Don't worry, Okoye says. She's got help. And then we see the girl boss scene, as we have been calling it. An all-female team of heroes arrive to defend against Thanos' forces. Valkyrie, Mantis, 2014 Gamora, 2023 Nebula, Wasp, Shuri, and Rescue.
What did you think of when you saw that first time?
I thought it was better than the girl power scene in Infinity War.
Okay.
But it is a little heavy-handed.
Yeah.
I do have to say that there is a heavy-handed nature of just like, look at our lady heroes doing cool things. But I do think it's important that, you know, that there is a moment for I think it's important to say that, like, this may not be for me, so like it's kind of hard for me to judge,
Mhm.
right? But yeah,
I was going to say I know what you're saying, or I think we're kind of on the same page. Like that the representation is great. It was seemed a little forced because you have characters that have never fought together. And I understand it's probably like a slight tribute to the A-Force female Avengers group from the comics. I was just like, okay, I don't think these people are going to really help Captain Marvel too much, right? You've got a couple people who are like stabby, right? And the rest
Right.
are it's like, who's the third most powerful member of the group? Is it Valkyrie? Is it like, it's not Wasp? Like, so anyway, I hear what you're saying. I almost was like, I will say if Morgan had showed up in her own little Iron Lady costume, I'd lost my mind. I'd be like, all right, we've clearly jumped the shark here. But anyway,
yeah. Captain Marvel, and this is the problem with Captain Marvel in the MCU right now, or at this point of writing, was she's limitless power, right? She's limitless power with no caveats, really. And that's why she's a difficult character to show up in like big fights like this, because she kind of has that same Deus Ex Machina, kind of the Eagles from Lord of the Rings effect. Captain Marvel appears to do just fine without the team behind her, and she speeds towards the time machine with the gauntlet. Just then, Thanos unleashes a javelin toss of his double-edged sword, which causes the van to explode just as Danvers arrives. The blast sends her flying and causes her to drop the gauntlet. So now we are without a time travel mechanism. We have the gauntlet. So it's a free for all for the gauntlet. Iron Man gets brushed aside by Thanos. Thor and Cap hold their own for a quick second before getting beaten. As Thanos is about to put on the gauntlet, Danvers shows up and proves herself able to match Thanos blow for blow. He's managed to slip on the gauntlet, and we see the power stones, the power of the stones course through him. Danvers holds the gauntlet hand apart so that he can't snap his fingers again. She has him on his knees when he grabs the power stone with his other hand and punches Danvers and knocks her out.
it's a cool scene.
A strange. What's
It's a
that?
cool scene.
It is. It is. And meanwhile, we've noticed that the dam is breaking on the reservoir that's apparently right outside Avengers campus. Strange is battling to keep the water at bay. He and Tony make eye contact, and we see Doctor Strange raise his shaky hand, which we know is from his surgery, right? Comes up and he holds up his one finger. As Thanos pops the Power Stone back into the gauntlet, Iron Man desperately tries to remove the gauntlet from Thanos. Thanos backhands Tony and triumphantly says, "I am inevitable." And he snaps his fingers, but then you just hear a clunk. And then Thanos turns his hand and we see that the stones are gone. Cut back over to Tony, where we find out that he took his dad's advice from earlier in the movie and instead of pulling it, shook it. Tony reveals that the stones are attached to his own glove, that he designed the nanobots to all work together so he could shake the stones loose and onto his own glove. The energies burn through Tony's body, and he says the words which launched this whole thing: "I am Iron Man." Snap. Thanos watches in silence as Tony snaps his fingers, and in the moments immediately follow, we see Thanos' force get reduced to dust. Thanos sits down and accepts defeat as Ash takes him too. If you look really closely in the background, you can actually see that the Black Order kind of replicated some of the most noticeable deaths from the first snap. So, Corvus Glaive, I think it is, that's stumbling.
Yep.
Very similar to the way that, or no, that's Ebony Maw. Ebony Maw is stumbling, very similar to the way that Peter stumbles on Titan after he's been snapped. You see, I think it's Corvus holding Proxima in a very similar way to the way that Scarlet Witch held Vision. All very similar to the first snap, which is really cool callback for sure.
Yeah. The originally Tony doesn't say anything. They actually had to, I think, bring him back in to record, and I think he was, if I remember correctly, he was real nervous about it. And the editor Jeffrey Ford suggested it, and so 3 months before the release, this was the last footage shot of him doing the snap and saying, "I am Iron Man."
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And there's actually some footage online. I'll have to try and find it so I can post it, of some of the outtakes as well, where he says he has some crass ones where he's like, "Well, you there."
Yeah, totally.
and stuff like that, which is pretty great. So the war's over. The heroes have saved the universe, but at great cost, right? The power and Infinity Stones have gravely injured Tony. Rhodey cries as he holds Tony's hands. Peter arrives to tell him that we won. We won, Mr. Stark. We won. You did it, sir. You did it. I'm sorry, Tony. Sorry, I'm breaking up reading this part. Pepper arrives and Tony says softly, "Hey, Pep." She smiles. She holds his hand. Friday announces, "Life functions critical." Pepper: "Tony, look at me. We're gonna be okay. You can rest now." She cries softly as he slips away, the light in his arc reactor fading out, and his arm goes limp. With that, Anthony Edward Stark is dead, surrounded by his family, friends, and Avengers teammates.
Oof. Tough.
That one is rough. There's a deleted scene where there's basically deleted scenes of every character reacting to Tony's death. They're all there, all with varying effect, right? And Yeah, this one, it's interesting. This one chokes me up a little bit, but you would think the Iron Man fan would get really distraught at this scene, but I don't know. I think it's almost like full circle, right? It's the guy who wouldn't take the
Yeah.
who wouldn't do the sacrifice play doing the
Yeah.
sacrifice play.
From and we'll see it a little bit when we get to the Cap's part. You see him going from selfish, self-absorbed person first film to selfless, right?
Yeah.
The scene when you rewatch it, the way in which he could barely summon the strength, hey Pep, like that's the last thing he says, right? And she's trying to, you can just tell she's just trying. I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow is a very good actress. I as much as grief even over the previous 20 films, but does a great job at the scene where she's like trying to hold it together. He's like, Tony, you know, we're going to be okay. You can rest now. That callback to earlier in the film where she talks about, would you be able to rest? And he reassures her, you can rest now. And it just, I don't know, she is, and then he slips away and then she just starts to cry. Oh man, it's just so emotional. It's so well done.
Yeah.
There was a at one point, you know, at one point in time, there were thoughts that all six original, wait, have that right? All the original Avengers would all die during the movie. And I think they realized like, we just do not have the bandwidth to do 5 deaths.
Yeah.
And just, it's like this kind of perfect ending to the film, you know, in a weird way. So yeah, gut punch. You thought it was depressing with Scarlet when Black Widow died, like, hello, gut punch number 3, just, brutal. So, well, let's, you know, the world is made whole. You know, we try to return to happier times as we hear a voiceover monologue of Tony. Clint reunites with his family. Peter is back in high school, reunites with his buddy Ned. We see Scott and Hope and Cassie hanging out in their stoop in San Francisco. We see in Wakanda, we see T'Challa and Ramonda and Shuri watching fireworks from a balcony. And then we cut to the Stark's cabin and we see Pepper and Morgan and Happy and Rhodes and Steve and Thor and others gathered around Tony's self-eulogy that he recorded before the day before the big time heists, you know. It's very emotional. He says, so I thought I better record a little greeting in the case of an untimely death on my part. I mean, not that death at any time isn't untimely. The time travel thing we're going to try and pull off tomorrow, it's got me scratching my head about the survivability of it all. Then again, that's the hero gig, part of the journey. It's the end. What am I even tripping for? Everything's going to work out exactly the way it's supposed to. And then he somehow manages to look at Morgan and say, I love you 3000. And we get the funeral service for Tony. There's the small wreath of flowers that floats into the lake, the pier, if you will, bearing the first arc reactor, the one that Pepper had framed, along with the words, proof that Tony Stark has a heart. And then we scan through the various people that have come to pay their respects. You start with Pepper and Morgan, followed by Happy and Rhodes, making its way through Steve and the Avengers, followed by the Ant-Man contingency, the Guardians of the Galaxy group, minus Gamora, the Wakandan representation, Clint's family, Clint's family, the Wanda, Bucky, and Sam, perhaps tied together. I wasn't quite sure of their grouping, perhaps Civil War.
Yeah.
Followed by Harley Keener, Admiral Thunderbolt Ross, which I'm going to come back to in a moment, Maria Hill, and then Carol Danvers and Nick Fury. And it was just the only ones who knew. The actors didn't realize that they were filming Tony's funeral. They were all there wearing black, and then they realized that Robert Downey Jr. wasn't there. And then it occurs to them like, oh, we're actually recording a funeral scene, which is wild. Only Chris Evans knew, who read the whole script, and Gwyneth Paltrow in that scene. The only record scratch for me is Thunderbolt Ross here. Like, he is still hunting the people at this funeral. And we know from the WandaVision, the Sokovia Accords are still in effect. I'm just like, God, the stones in this dude to show up. Mind boggling.
Yeah.
Anyway, Clint is standing with Wanda on the pier after Tony's funeral. And Clint says, I wish there was a way that I can let her know that we did it, that we won. And Wanda says she knows. They both do. The both being in reference to Vision.
Is it Vision or is it Pietro, you think?
I think it's Vision.
And that's fair.
I think it's Vision. We cut to Happy and Morgan, who asks how she's, Happy asks Morgan how she's doing. Morgan asks for a cheeseburger, and Happy smirks and says that her dad loved cheeseburgers. And it's a callback to the cheeseburger line at the press conference after escaping the cave in Iron Man.
Do you know, so I didn't find this out until I was researching for this movie. I should have found this in Iron Man, but I didn't. Do you know the real life story where that cheeseburger thing came from? So Robert Downey Jr.
I do, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. was completely drugged out. This is during his drug days. Completely drugged out. He says he was in a Burger King drive-thru with, quote, tons of fucking dope in my car. Been up for a couple of days. Could have gone for the next couple of days. And maybe wouldn't have been here, right? So we went to Burger King. It was such a disgusting burger that he had ordered that's what caused him to basically realize he's in so much trouble. Need to curl up, need to get this all out of his system. That is what started his journey on recovery is a bad cheeseburger from Burger King. And so all the way back to Iron Man, when Iron Man says, I would like a cheeseburger, that is actually a callback to Robert Downey Jr.'s real life drug struggles and his recovery. That Robert Downey Jr. asked to add to the movie and probably improvised, while they were shooting.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's really cool.
Isn't it?
We can talk about my journey.
Yeah, your journey. Soon.
You want to talk about it now, or you want to talk about it after we're done with the show?
He's saying, what I want to see is a deleted scene of Happy smirk when she says, your dad loved cheeseburgers. You know what else your dad liked? Booze and promiscuous women. But we'll save that for. There is a deleted scene where Tony actually visits grown-up Morgan in what appears to be like the astral plane that kind of didn't make any sense, and you kind of didn't know who the kid was, and then you kind of
weird.
Yeah, it was a little bit weird. They cut it out, thankfully. We cut to Tonsberg. We cut to New Asgard, and Thor appoints Valkyrie as the new Queen of Asgard. So the person who a couple movies ago tried to sell him, it actually did sell him into this basically like fight slavery in Thor Ragnarok, is now the head of New Asgard. She has some ideas. He doesn't know what he's going to do, but he does have a ride. Cut to Rocket saying, move it or lose it, hairbag, before leaving with the Guardians, who are on a mission to find 2014 Gamora. It turns out she did not vanish with the rest of her father's army, but hasn't been seen since the battle. There's a DVD extra which indicates that it was left vague as to what to happen, to allow James Gunn flexibility in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, although Gunn was not happy that Thor took off in space with the Guardians. But as he'd already written much of Guardians Volume 3 at this point in time, he was like, what am I going to do with this as Guardians?
He wrote them out real quick. Yeah. It was fine.
But there's some disagreement between Thor and Quail about leadership. Thor says, well, there's Guardians of the Galaxy back together again. Where to first? And Quill goes, just so you know, this is still my ship. I'm still in charge. He's like, I know, of course you are, of course. And then he swipes the screen to move the direction of the map. And Quill says, see, you say of course, but then you touch the map, it makes you think that maybe you didn't realize that I was in charge. That's your own insecurities in there. He calls him Quail, and he's like, I'm merely trying to be of service and assisting. Quill, that's what I said. And then it's this funny scene, and I'm really glad that, we've just had a downer of a scene. So it's great that they ended on a slightly lighthearted note.
Yeah.
And then Drax says, you should fight one another for the honor of leadership. And Nebula goes, sounds fair. Quill's like, it's not necessary. Okay. It's just not. And they just have it's this funny scene, and they're like, I got some blasters. So you guys want to use knives? Oh yes, knives. Please, let's use knives. And then it was just like, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Man just going, yes, use knives.
I love that part.
So great.
She's well bloodthirsty. So Bruce hands Steve a briefcase with all the stones and instructs him to return them to the exact moment in time when they were obtained so as not to create new timelines. Bruce confides that he tried to bring Natasha back when he used the gauntlet, but her sacrifice was irreversible. So it's this very kind of this sad moment. Sam offers to go with him. Steve says, so this is on him. Then he says goodbye to Bucky, and he says, don't do anything stupid till I get back. And Bucky goes, how can I? You're taking all the stupid with you, which is a callback to the first Avenger, Captain America.
So
the
real
first
quick,
Avenger.
the sacrifice is irreversible, but Gamora's sacrifice totally got reversed.
It's a different Gamora who, as movies go forward,
we
does
bring
not
back a different Nat.
She doesn't resume her place.
I thought, well, not directly, right? But because in Guardians
3, at the end, she kind of has some respect for Quill, but she does not love him.
She doesn't love him.
Yeah.
No, God, no.
That's fair.
So I get the one real quick question, and we have, for the most part, like not nitpicked over the time travel, but the return the stone thing. I don't see how this is possible.
You're gonna see it in a Disney Plus series coming soon to a streaming service near you.
So you have the Tesseract is gone. You can't even return the Tesseract. You can't return the scepter. You've got like a bunch of stones. Is he gonna like crush up the reality stone and then turn it into ether and then shove it into like how is that gonna work? Now there was I read one. I can't remember if one of the directors, one of the writers said that Steve only has to deliver the stones to the exact moment that they were taken. And that the Ancient One explained that the stones create the flow of time, and removing the stones causes them that flow to split. So Cap doesn't have to reinsert the ether inside of Jane, just has to get the stone there at that same time. It doesn't make sense to me at all, but like, how do you return the Soul Stone?
Yeah,
you just chuck it over to the throw it at the Red Skull and run away? Like, I don't understand.
Well, and I do say it jokingly, but there is supposed to be in not production, but in writing right now, a Disney Plus series that explores this exact question.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and what you're failing to grasp right now, David, is that Ryan is correct.
but no, I think like joking aside, that is a whole, right? It's probably one of those superhero, like, you just got to get it there.
Yeah.
Well, we got to put this one back into the safe, and we got to put this one back in this guy's butt, and we're good. Okay. We're done.
So Steve doesn't have a shield anymore, but he grabs Mjolnir, which, if you think about it, he's the only one who can return Mjolnir, right? Travels back to the Infinity Stones, back to the proper places in time. Cap will be gone as long as he needs, but for Bucky, Sam, and Hulk, it should only be 5 seconds. When Bucky's line, I'm going to miss you, buddy. To me, really kind of jumped out. I mean,
Bucky's in on it.
Yeah,
Bucky knows what Cap's about.
He knows.
Sure.
Steve vanishes in the past, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but doesn't return. At least not as they expect him to. They turn around. They see Steve sitting on a bench. He's now an elderly man. And Steve explains that after finishing his task, he decided to live life.
And run for president and vice president.
Sam says, so did something go wrong? or did something go right? And Steve says, well, after I put the stones back, I thought maybe I'll try to, I was going to say get my beak wet, but I said some of that life that Tony was telling me to get. And he said, how'd that work out for you? It's beautiful. I'm happy for you, truly. Thank you. Sam says, only thing bumming me out is the fact that I had to live in a world without Captain America. And Steve says, oh, that reminds me. And he reveals a new Captain America shield. And Steve says, try it on. And Bucky nods his approval. Sam picks up the shield, holds it just like Cap would. Steve says, how does it feel? And Sam says, like it's someone else's. And Steve says, it isn't. Sam says, thank you. I'll do my best. And Steve says, that's why it's yours. Yeah, man, that was just a very kind of emotional scene. Sets up, new Captain America, new identity for Falcon. One production point, when Chris Evans' mom saw the movie, and when he saw him, Chris Evans as an older version of his character, she cried because of the resemblance to his father. In real
wow.
life. So Cap went back to 1940. It's my understanding, 1948. Peggy, just after Agent Carter, is when it supposedly returns back in time. I have 1,000 questions as to whether he mentions Hydra. I have questions about does he
let
know?
it go. Let it go.
Does he not?
He knows it. If he interrupts the corruption of Hydra, then he doesn't get to where he was, where he gets his wife.
Yeah, it's just when you think about it, he just knows Bucky's being tortured somewhere, and he can't do anything to save him. It's just
it's kind of brutal. I
know. Sam ponders how the world will go on without Captain America, and Steve assures him that it won't. Sam accepts Steve's call and becomes the new Captain America. He will not. He won't until people object because he's not white. Steve won't go into specifics.
There's a movie coming. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Steve won't go into specifics about what exactly, but he did after finishing his final mission. But he admits that he finally did fulfill a promise he made many years ago, and that he would share that dance with the love of his life, Peggy Carter. And at the end of the film, we see we cut through an open door. I think it's implied that he actually just went. I mean, it happens in this. This is at the moment he snaps back. We see Steve dancing with Peggy Carter, keeping the promise he made in First Avenger. The song they dance to is the same song that Nick Fury is listening to in his Steve's apartment after he's attacked in Civil War. It's been a long, long time. And that is the end of the movie.